Welcome to the SuperPumped podcast. Thanks for joining us today. This is our second part of an interview with Jay DeFazio. Jay is a recent author. You Only Live Twice, a memoir in two genders. So last week we talked a lot about your kind of early childhood memories and some of that leading up to the point of meeting someone who would eventually become the father of your three children, as well as your spouse for 18 years. Right? So I was just reading the back cover of the book, and there was a line that really struck me. It said, and it's talking about the book, and I know you told me you didn't write this, but it said, it's about being a mom while becoming a man, about losing relationships and finding unexpected love, about the messy, non-linear path from self-hatred to self-acceptance. And dare I would say even a super pumped life now. So very cool. And so take me back to the fact that you ended up, how old were you when you got pregnant in high school as a teenager?
16.
16. Okay.
Yes, that was the second half of my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And tell me about telling your parents, telling his parents, how did that all come about? Talking about marriage or not marriage or...
It was all, we talked about being just kind of on the ride with no brakes. And so it was, part of that. The relationship that was very, I'll back up for a second and say that relationship was very, had power imbalance, a very significant power imbalance.
And you had less power.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to assume anything, right? But
Yeah. He had a lot of anger.
Okay.
So he had very short fuse and was very angry. And I'm sure there are things in his childhood that he was dealing with. I mean, not about because we all have stuff.
Sure.
But I wasn't accustomed to that level of volatility. There was nothing.
Did it get physical?
Once or twice, and I talked about that in the book a little bit. But it was a lot of emotional, more emotionally abusive type situations that I didn't understand. And
in terms of controlling or in terms...
Yeah, so it's very jealous, very possessive, but also just very angry. So sometimes he would get angry at me and just stop talking to me, and I wouldn't have any idea what happened.
Oh, so the silent treatment.
It's I'm talking hours of silent treatment.
That's never stop.
We
that's not a good, for those of you listening, that's not a good conflict resolution technique recommended by SuperPumped.
Yes. So, but again, I was in that, I was just turned 15 when we met up, and I was very young. And again, I came from a very peaceful home.
Okay. So this was all a very form.
Yeah. And it's a different upbringing. I could never talk to my parents the way that he talked to his parents. That was just never going to happen. Right. A different level of respect was what I knew with the world. And so, and again, couldn't get out of that situation, and it just escalated.
So when you how did you find out you were pregnant? Who did you reach out to first? Your parents or the boyfriend?
Neither. I was, kind of ignoring it. So the relationship was not great, and we fought all the time. So it was just fighting all the time. And at some point in there, in the silent treatment, and it was just kind of the same stuff. He would just stop talking to me, and then I would have to wait until he decided he wanted to talk. But I had to still, walk with him through the school, meet him after the classes, do all the same things while he was angry and glaring at me. So, and that kind of came to a head, and he one day didn't want to start talking again. It was, I'm breaking up with you. Some kids will do it. And then 3 hours later, it's back to normal. Right?
Were you relieved? Were you silently, yes, we're done?
Yes. I was really shocked. I was really like that happened. And it's weird to think that I wouldn't have just taken that and ran and been like,
yeah, he's been decided. Get you get out of jail free cards, right? No, you didn't.
But I'd been in that relationship for a year, well over a year. And so, when you're compromised emotionally, I was a kid.
Sure.
And again, hiding all of that drama from my parents, because my dad never would have
put on a bit of
neither one would have. Sure, my mom or my dad, but my dad with his temper, there was a moment that I feared, if they found out that my dad would go to their house, and maybe do something physical and fire.
Well, that was the way, just for our younger listeners, that was the way fathers resolved conflict back in the day.
Right.
Something happened with their daughter. That wasn't uncommon. So.
Yeah. And then we lived about a mile apart.
Okay.
On the same subdivision. And so I was terrified that my dad, if he found out anything about this guy, how he really treated me, then he would go over there. And
so you hit all that.
I did. And, because again, it's in my head, if my dad would go to jail, my dad doesn't drive, he's the only income we have, it was, it's really scary to think about. So I did all of that. And when, so we had this breakup, this fight that happened that was the normal fight, I guess. And then he just decided it wasn't going to be done being mad.
Okay.
And so I was kind of thrown. I was upset.
Were you pregnant at that time?
I was. And I
did you know that, or did you not know?
I knew. I was like maybe a couple weeks late.
Okay. So you had a suspicion.
I had a suspicion, but wasn't really thinking about it.
Okay.
It's just a suspicion. And then we were, he was doing his thing, and I was kind of reeling from that. And then also digesting
my jumped.
Yeah, from game.
Not that, yeah.
What does that mean?
Even though looking back, that might have been the escape hatch you knew.
Yes, nonetheless. Yeah. So I was talking to my best friend back in West Virginia that I'm growing up with, and so I had a little job, a little part-time job at a fast food restaurant, and so I could afford a little bit every now and then to make a phone call and pay my parents for the loss. So I don't have anything out of the breath. So I would make some late night calls to my best friend, and there was another girl at school that was a grade ahead of me, and she had a baby.
Okay.
And we'd become friends in a class. And so I was talking to her a lot. And
had you revealed to your best friend in West Virginia and this other girl in your school that you thought you were pregnant?
Yes.
But had you gone to CVS and done a pregnancy test or anything yet?
No. I just knew you were late on your right. And I didn't have a car. I was sharing a car with my dad's cars. And
so you weren't going to tell dad that I got to go to the pharmacy or the pregnancy test.
Okay, I can have it.
Yeah.
And I think, when you're in a situation where you just don't want to acknowledge something that's like really catastrophic.
Yeah.
So just being kind of, I don't think about this right now. But not so much. It was just like, I can't think about it right now.
Yeah.
And still being like, with that relationship ending, just being all over the place.
And this is second semester junior year of high school.
Yeah. So it was a very kind of
like around prom. Had you gone to prom?
Yeah, it's May after prom.
Right after. It's been to prom.
Yeah. So this is May of my.
So were you a prom pregnancy? Potentially.
Yeah, baby spray, right?
Okay.
That was good. Great. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's getting real.
I'm real.
And so really, I went into deep depression. I experienced depression before, at other times in my life. And we didn't know depression, right? Because nobody's talking about depression. But, I just wanted to sleep, to stay in my room, and not be awake. And even to the point of, wanting to kill myself. Like I really hit that low of like, I just don't want to be here anymore.
Okay.
And my two friends that I was talking to just kept encouraging me, as the weeks were going on.
Yeah.
Now we're into June. Now we're at the beginning of July.
So are you almost second trimester by that point?
Yeah, I was hitting about the end of the first trimester. Yeah.
And you still hadn't officially tested, but you knew. But
that
your body,
you kind of know.
You're in.
Yeah. So, and so I planned a trip. I just needed to get away. And so I planned a trip to ask my parents if I could go visit my friend in West Virginia for a week or two, and then they were coming there to visit
at the beginning of the summer.
In July. Okay. Yeah, and so I would go. My dad was going to drop me off, and I would stay with my friend for a week, and then they were coming to visit. So my parents were coming back.
Oh, nice. And to visit family,
and then we'd all go home together. So I ended up being there about 3 weeks too.
Oh, okay.
And so I got away. But before that, so I got this trip planned and approved.
Uh-huh.
And then, my friend is like you gotta tell them.
Right.
Yeah. And my friend who had already had baby was like, you gotta tell them, but you're probably gonna be showing when you get out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want them to find out that way. So there's a lot of late night phone calls, and then, breaking that news to my mom first. And, she,
How did your mom take that?
I mean, she wasn't thrilled, but she was, she was just like, I can't believe it.
Had your mom gotten pregnant with you young, or?
Oh, she was married. She was 21 when
Okay. So they were married.
yeah,
Okay.
different route.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's disappointment. She wasn't happy about it. But I woke her about a bet to tell her. So in the middle of the night. So there wasn't a lot of time to.
But your dad was working second shift, so he wasn't there.
He was on day shifts at that point.
So he was asleep.
Yeah.
So he slept right through it.
Well, I went up and woke her up and said,
So,
"Can you not?" Because she came downstairs from her room.
okay.
And I couldn't say. And again, all of the shame and all those. I just handed her the paper. So my friend had driven me to a clinic, and I voted
Okay.
earlier that day. And so I just handed her the paper with the result on.
Were you crying? Were you?
No, I was just.
You were just not down.
I was yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm depressed and
Sure.
had to do this thing. And but before it wasn't a long interaction. It was very brief. She was disappointed, but she hugged me.
Okay.
Before she left the room, and she went upstairs, and then she told my dad after.
Sure.
So and then I got a little crazy for a little bit.
Did he erupt?
He did erupt.
Okay.
And it's not a good exchange, and that was the first rift that my dad and I ever had.
That's right.
Whole life.
So that's hard.
So it's great. It was hard.
Yeah.
It's really tough. But then that was just days before that trip. And so he did continue to drive me out there. He did say I could still go.
Okay.
And it was a dead silent 5.5 hour drive.
That's for me and super awkward.
That was it was heartbreaking. I being one of three, the oldest of three.
Yeah.
I had always, if he had told me I was going to get to take a trip with my dad, just me and him, I went like, oh, yeah, I mean, the coolest thing I could ever write, right? And that was just the opposite of that. It was really
well. And as an oldest child too, I think there's that immense pressure. I'm not an oldest child, so I know, but I heard there's just that innate wanting to please your parents,
right. Yeah, you're usually like more mature.
Yeah.
You end up kind of caretaking the little ones, and they pinned all their hopes on you. So for that out there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was rough. But the timing was good, and that it just got me out of there.
Yeah,
and gave clear, smoke to clear. And we were fine. By the time I came back, my grandma had talked to my dad a little bit. He dropped me off with my best friend, and then he spent the night at his mom's house.
Wow.
We're driving back to the. I found out later that my grandma had a really good talk with him.
I'll sit in kind of.
Yeah, I've had to put things together a little bit, and
isn't that awesome when you get help from an unexpected source that you might think wouldn't help,
and I didn't know that for till that. Yeah.
Okay.
So by the time they came back, and the time we were good, and they took me to a real doctor when I got home, and
sure,
my grandma had even taken me out and got me some clothes because I was starting to use different shirts to not hit time. So yeah, and they were very supportive and very loving. It was like, well, we still want you to be able to go to college.
Okay.
My dad had figured out that a way that he could put the baby on the insurance. So
okay.
And they were, from that point on, it was, I couldn't have asked for more supportive parents.
So when did you make the strategic decision to let the father of the baby know that you were pregnant?
I told him just before I went out of town. So in between, I was at my parents and leaving town.
So you told him and then skipped town because you thought this could get ugly.
Well, I just had to tell him. And we technically weren't a couple. We were broken up. And
so you've been broken up for a few months by then?
Yeah, at least a month and a half, maybe.
Okay. And now how did he take that?
Horribly. Really. So it was a pretty awful scenario.
All right.
And, but it was maybe, the whole thing was maybe 30, 45 minutes, but then it was
in person or on the phone?
In person. Outside of his car. Oh, wow. Got pretty ugly. But something kind of clicked in my brain at the end of that exchange. That I was just like, he was angry that I was going to take him to court, making pay child support for 18 years. It was just something just snapped and I just screamed back at him. I'm like, I don't want your damn money. I don't want your money. I don't want anything.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, we parted ways. And then I left town. So that's kind of a nice breather from that.
Yeah.
So,
So how did you end up back together?
oh gosh. Well, when I came back and eventually school started again,
Senior year.
senior year,
Everyone's senior year.
Yep. And,
I bet you didn't feel that.
oh my gosh. Now that's how I was showing. And
So you had the weight of the world on you going into senior year.
yeah, walking through the school when a teacher I'd had the year before for marriage and family class looks at my stomach and says, well, you didn't listen to anything I taught last year.
Oh, wow, that's actually really cut.
Yeah. So, but I had friends by that time because I was supportive. And so we still saw each other. We were still broken up. But he kind of kept me on a string and he would kind of reel me back in and I'd fall for it for some reason.
Okay.
And so then by October, I kind of had enough. And then he definitely wanted to be back in my life. So
really?
it was this odd dynamic of like, okay, I'm sick of your stuff now. And now he's suddenly interested. So,
The guys always want what they can't have. So it's strangely hard to get, then they want it for. So
and then it was, then he was like, well, this is my child. This is me. Which was true. I think we had certain rights. So we were right back in it.
okay.
But it was, it was the same dynamic, the same power,
Was there talk of marriage at that point?
like not really. That's so, I mean, we were, no, and I wasn't in a rush. He wasn't in a rush. And in fact, when my parents took me to see a doctor, to see an OB doctor when I got back from West Virginia, that doctor was a really kind man.
Okay.
That took me into his office and my mom, and he said, I just want you to know that you don't have to get married. You have a life still. You can do a lot of things. You can go to school. But there's no obligation for you to think that you have to jump into a marriage. And so, that was pretty. Yeah, that was my parents run that train too.
Oh, really?
I had to get married.
Okay.
They were probably clued into
A little bit of
to the relationship.
relationship.
Yeah, they had kind of seen a little bit of
Okay.
what was happening by that time. So, yes, there was no pressure there.
Okay.
And so we were kind of back in.
Okay. And when did you deliver your son?
January of my senior year.
Oh, wow.
So yes,
Okay.
yeah, and that was
And was the father at the hospital and a part of that whole process?
yeah, we had been back together as a couple, so he was back into the the varying power dynamic. So
Okay.
I was very much like kind of following that lead.
Now, as all this is going on, how are you processing, or are you completely are you so distracted in suppressing gender issues that you're not even you're on the full woman train right now? I mean, you're pregnant, you're doing it, you're checking all the boxes, right? So are you thinking about any of that, or is that kind of on the back burner then? Or are you just like, what?
You don't. Nobody is prepared to become a parent. Like you can read all the books in the world.
Yeah.
You're never prepared for what that's like when that baby is there. But
Yeah.
from a the body shame was still there.
Okay.
So physically being pregnant and going through that process was mortifying. It was absolutely awful. It was so embarrassing and so uncomfortable. And I'm on 5'2", so
Okay.
I was small and carrying a 9-pound baby.
Sure. 9 pounds. That's a
painful.
baby.
Yeah. And then it was a C-section. So, which I had never even in my little night.
And that's a major. I was in for all 3 of our kids delivered by C-section, and that is a major surgery that your baby's mother goes through. I mean, to see Kristen with just all of her parts laid out there, and then the recovery. And I can remember passing, not to get too graphic, but almost like softball size blood clots, and it's no joke.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No, not fun at all.
Well, and I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah, they don't prep you for that.
No, and my mom's about 5'1", and she had, my brother was 9.5 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And I was an 8-pound baby. So, not, and my mom and I had totally different builds too. So we had, my mom was a curvy woman build and I'm kind of straight, So, but it comes down to bone structure, right?
Sure.
Bone structure. So, I hadn't thought about having that C-section. That was a major surgery and that was 1989. So, you were in hospital 5 days then.
Yeah.
I didn't really get out of bed the first couple of days. Right? It's not how they do it today, but, yeah, so that was another piece. And then just when you're just not prepared to be a parent, it's, there's no words. It's just a whirlwind of, but I had a night at the hospital that I talked about in the book, where I got into a fight with the baby's dad on the phone.
At the hospital after a C-section after giving birth.
Yeah.
And they're already fighting.
Right.
There's no honeymoon, baby.
No.
Because I remember just feeling such gratitude to my wife for this process, like almost angelic. Like, but you didn't get any of that.
That's not the case. Wait,
Okay, you did now.
He was, he loved the baby. He's just, excited about the baby. It's his son. His first son.
Big deal.
And he was good with the baby. Okay. I will not get it out. But, we had an argument on the phone. He was insistent that, when I came home, he was going to stay in my room with the baby. And there was a rule at my mom's house, even after I was pregnant, that, he could come over and stay, but we didn't sleep in the same room.
Yeah.
Not that. So that's,
Okay.
You have younger siblings.
Right.
You don't.
Yeah.
So if he would be on the couch or take my brother's room,
Sure.
But he decided, that when I was getting discharged the next day, that I was to tell my mom that
Oh boy.
he was staying in my room with his child, and that's how it was going to be. And
what a spot for you to talk about awful.
And nobody's going to tell my mom anything like that. First of all, I don't even speak to my mom that way.
Sure.
Yes, that's her
house. Yeah.
Well, I never would have challenged her.
Right.
That help. And I didn't care. I didn't necessarily want
You were like, use mom as cover to keep him at bay a little bit.
But I had to make that phone call to my mom. I was so
he was kind of demanding that in the room.
On the phone to me. So he mostly had already gone, and he was demanding that to me the night before I went home. We had been in the hospital 4 nights, and I had no choice, or I thought I had nothing much but to call my mom and say, hey, of course I softened it. I did, sure. You tried, and my mom was she had to have been like, well, you're out of your mind. Yeah. She was like, no, that's not. The rules. Like, why are you even? This is not even a discussion.
Right.
And then it was just being in that middle, which I often was in the middle of that, him and my mom, or him and my parents, or him and my brother trying to hide some of the aspects of the relationship that were really toxic, but also, mitigate these battles.
Did you also find yourself in the middle as your kids got older?
Not too much. So my mom took care of the baby. When I was at school, I went back to school. My mom.
So you finished your senior year?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
My mom was amazing. So she awesome, taught me everything I needed to know. And I was there, all day with them. And, there's nobody safer to leave your child with than your mom.
Yeah.
And so, she was great. But yeah, that was a rough argument to have. And he lost that argument, which I knew he would, but sure, I was put in that spot. And, but it was a moment that I talk about in the book of, that was kind of my first hanging up in tears from those phone calls, with 25 staples in my stomach, sitting in this chair, this little baby's in the bassinet in front of me, and that's awful. I was sitting there crying, and I got off the last call, and the baby had been sleeping in there's little clear bassinets, and I look up, and he's parked right in front of me. And I look up, and his little eyes are open. His two little dark eyes are just staring into my soul. And I, got myself up out of the chair. I was in a lot of pain. And I walked over, and I was rubbing his head, and we were just kind of looking at each other. We had this first bonding moment, and I was crying, and I just thought, man, you have 2 shit parents. You've had a freaking sorry, I'm a mess, and you're mine, and I love you, but man, you got the short end of the stick on us. But, at that point, that was a bonding moment that it was like, okay, we're in this together. This is my child and Jero. He didn't ask for any of this nonsense.
Right.
And so at that point, then my attention was pretty much focused on him. And then and it was the first, bringing him home. And as those days, you start to bond more and more. And that was the first experience of being loved that I had eventually. That love from that baby as he got older was like the first real feeling of love. Now, like unconditional. Like this kid I'm his everything. That doesn't matter. He's not worried if I'm going to hell. He doesn't worry about what clothes I'm wearing, what I look like. He just loves me. Like, really, he just loves me. And I loved him. And so, at that point, we were like, he and I were that was my big story. Yes. Okay. Well, that was, that kept me going forward.
So that was your why.
That was my why. Absolutely.
And that carried on throughout, right? You answered today.
Yeah. He's, he's married now. I have a granddaughter.
Awesome.
She's my little art buddy. And like this, we're still close. So.
Wow. That is awesome. So at what point then did you end up getting married?
I kind of gave into that. I got married when I was 21.
Oh, okay. So you dated off and on, or
no? We're a couple
all the way through then.
Pretty much. I tried to break up. So there I said,
you actually
a period of time I tried to break up. I gotten back into the church, and I kind of found this like, okay, maybe I'm not going to hell if I stay on the right track, and I'll raise this baby in the church, and I'll do all the things.
So you did all the sacrifice, jumped in,
and it was educating myself and being taught that I was working at a Catholic-run nursing home. Also, the administrator of that nursing home was a nun. Okay. I was working for her as a typist, and we've developed a friendship. And she was like old enough to be a little older than my mom, but was more of like an aunt.
Okay.
And she, one day we had a talk, and I said to her, I said, why, this baby is awesome, but why am I not being punished? Like I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Was there, how could I do something so horrible and then I get rewarded with this like wonderful child, like the pure soul, everything I've ever experienced, right? And she was kind of the first person that said, God doesn't work that way. Like you're putting man-made qualities on God. That's not how it works. So I felt like, okay.
So that was the first time you had a conception that God was love.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. So, and that kind of took me in another direction. And so I was able to eventually break off the relationship, but he wasn't going away.
Okay.
Willingly. So, we had a little bit of a break, and he kept coming back from the back, trying to convince me. And, some other people were like, oh, you should date. You've never really dated anybody. Don't really want to date anybody.
Right.
And I didn't. I tried. I had one failed blind date.
Okay.
That's kind of comical. There's also detail in the book, but that didn't go well. And I just got to a point where I just gave up. I just thought there's nobody out there I want to date. I still don't like myself. There's still something wrong with me, and I don't know what that is. But the idea of dating a man was just not appealing at all.
Okay.
I was confused as to why.
Because you in your head are still attracted physically to women.
Yeah.
So that must have been a very...
Oh, yeah. And I wasn't allowed myself to think about any of that. But, because to me, that was still like, you could still go to hell for that. So I was really blocking all of that out at that time and really just focused on my kid. I just love my kid.
It's awesome.
But yeah, the idea of having to date. And then as I played it out, and I thought, well, if I did find somebody and try to date, like my ex is going to make that miserable because I still have to share this child with him. And I'm not sending this child to his house on the weekends without me. Like I just didn't want to do that.
Okay.
And the thought of that was terrifying.
Okay.
Not because he would be in danger. I mean, he was a good dad, and I still give him, and he's a good dad. He loves those kids.
Yeah.
So they love him. Yeah. But I just, I didn't want to not be there with my kid.
Yeah.
So, I just kind of gave up, and was like, well, he is a good dad. My kid loves him. And all right, but we got to be married because if not, then I'm living in sin.
So Dave, I'm back to church at this point. So
Yeah. So that kind of.
and did the nine coach you to get married or
No,
not have any?
no,
No swear down.
no. She was kind of like cheerleading for me to date.
Okay. Interesting.
And date. That's the normal thing.
Yeah, like your age.
I was like, 21 and just kind of wishing I'd said to her one time in a conversation, I said, I wish I could just skim to 40. Wow. She's like, 40? You're 21. Why you?
All right, nobody wants to.
I was like,
He wasn't a 40s back to check on it, right?
yeah. So, but in my head, I was like, I just don't want to do all this. Like, I just want to have all these things figured out. But I just, it's kind of that, like, I just want to go under the radar. I just want to get through, it's kind of like still that attitude that I have. Like, nothing really makes sense. I love this kid, but anything outside of that, I just want to, can we just cut to the chase and get through it?
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So you kind of, yeah, that makes sense. So 40 was kind of a seminal time period.
It ended up being, I ended up actually leaving the marriage just a couple of months before my 40th birthday.
Okay.
But I don't know if that was just some kind of like something I knew in my brains and I had.
So you're actually,
No, it's very strange that it happened that way. I didn't even think about it in the moment when it did happen. It was several years after that I thought back to that comment and I was like, oh yeah, I remember saying, because I didn't just say it to her, I said it to my best friend.
sure.
And I just thought about it. Like, I just don't want to do this. I got to figure out how to move out of my parents' house. I got to figure out what job I'm going to have. I got to figure out school, all of these things. And I just didn't want to do any of that.
Sons.
Everything felt too awkward and I couldn't figure anything out.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it was just a weird coincidence, I guess. But
well, do you have time for another segment?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are grateful to Jay for sharing so much of his story. And it sounds like from 40 on, we kind of go to the second gender. The book is titled You Only Live Twice, a memoir in two genders. And so we've pretty well covered. We fast forwarding a little bit from 21 to 40, but that's okay. The book has all kinds of details about more than, if you want to know a lot more about that period. But we will pick back up next time on the second gender. Thanks for joining us today on the SuperPumped podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining me today on the SuperPumped Life podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, I have two really quick next steps for you. First, subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you don't miss future shows. And second, jump on over to superpumped.com where there are all kinds of great tips and tools for you to launch your super pumped life. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.